Pitt State President Steve Scott announces he's stepping down from the position. A new Missouri task force looks at women in the workforce. Some hospitals in Arkansas are overwhelmed as COVID-19 cases there are spiking.
The four states' most watched news starts now.
Pitt State President Steve Scott announces he'll step down from his position in June of next year. This is KOAM News at 6. Scott has worked at PSU for the past 3 decades, including as president since 2009. In a press release, Scott says he is not retiring, telling the Kansas Board of Regents he's keeping his future options open. He says he does plan to stay in Pittsburgh and participate in university events. A Missouri nonprofit is creating a task force to better understand issues surrounding women's participation in the workforce. The organization, called United We, will host town halls throughout the state until October. The first one was scheduled to be in Joplin tomorrow, but is now virtual due to rising COVID-19 cases in the area. United We's president and CEO says they're hosting these town halls all throughout Missouri to make sure all women in the state could be represented.
It'll be a report that's for all Missourians to read and to educate themselves on, here's what Missouri women are saying. It will also be a tool to educate policymakers, to educate them on, here's what we heard from Missouri women, and here are some potential solutions.
The town hall will take place virtually tomorrow, July 20th, and is open to all Missouri women. If you're interested, you can RSVP at unitedwe.org. That link is also going to be up on our website, koamnewsnow.com. Checking in with Doug Heddy now for a first look at the weather.
Well, it turned out to be a pretty good Monday for us today. We have been watching a few isolated little thunder showers, little showers across southwestern parts of Missouri, but most of us have been dry, temperatures great, mid-80s for highs. But with these little spotty little pop-up showers, a few of us may get a quick little shower as these kind of rotate back toward the south and to the west, mainly on the Missouri side. But once we lose the heating of the day, these guys are gone, and then we're really dry for quite some time. Most of the rain stays to our south. There's just nothing really going on across the region. Temps mainly into low to mid 80s, so it is still warm. We don't have too much of a heat index. Heat indices right now are sitting into the mid 80s. As we go through the evening hours, we'll drop back through the 80s, 70s, eventually mid 60s later on tonight. So a pretty good night, but the heat will start to kick back in over the next few days. We're going to look at that here in a bit.
See you then. Authorities are looking for a suspect caught on surveillance robbing a Joplin bank with a weapon. Police say it happened this afternoon at the Great Southern Bank at 1232 South Range Line. According to police, the suspect entered the bank, demanded money while displaying a weapon, then fled with an undisclosed amount of cash. Joplin Police Department and FBI are investigating. Great Southern Bank is offering a $3,500 reward for the identity, arrest, and conviction of that person. Police arrest a man after a stabbing in Pittsburgh. It happened yesterday in the 400 block of West 6th Street. Authorities say a 40-year-old man suffered multiple stab wounds to the face and abdomen. After investigating, they identified 50-year-old Jose Flores Velez as a suspect and arrested him later that day. Police found he had an arrest warrant out of Crawford County for a bond violation on an original charge of domestic battery. They're holding him without bond and requesting a charge of aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. The victim in that case was later released from the hospital after receiving treatment. New COVID-19 cases continue in southwest Missouri as health officials continue door-to-door efforts. A reporter with the Kansas City Star recently followed community health advocates in Springfield. They were going door-to-door encouraging COVID vaccinations. The advocates would tell them of an upcoming clinic, hand a door tag to the resident, and ask a handful of questions, according to the reporter. Questions included, do you want information about the clinic? Do you know someone who does? Do you have any questions about other clinics or the vaccines? The reporter says the effort they saw was non-confrontational and the officials always took no for an answer. Governor Parson has raised concerns about a door-to-door situation. He joined Republicans worried that the outreach could be heavy-handed. The possibility of a global COVID resurgence has investors worried. Stocks on Wall Street tanked at the opening, and it was a similar story in markets overseas. Cases of COVID-19 are up in 50 states, and that hasn't happened since January. In Arkansas, 12 out of every 100 people have tested positive, and the hospitals there are overwhelmed. David Begnow reports from Little Rock.
I thought the vaccine was a hoax.
42-year-old Lamonte Boyd, a married father of 3, says he didn't listen to the doctors or even his wife when she got the COVID vaccine and told him he should too.
What did you think of COVID before you got sick, Mr. Boyd?
I brushed it off. I thought it was a joke.
There are going to be a lot of people watching who don't want to take the vaccine. What would you say to them?
Well, I tell those who don't want to take the vaccines, you playing Russian roulette with your lives.
Boyd was diagnosed with COVID-19 nearly 2 weeks ago. He developed pneumonia in both of his lungs, and still.
Right now, as we talk, my wind is short. That's why, I'm really gasping for air now.
Arkansas has the 3rd lowest full vaccination rate in the country. A little over 1 in 3 people here have gotten both of their shots. The state is now in its 3rd surge, says Dr. Cam Patterson, who is chancellor at Arkansas's only academic medical center.
To put it into perspective, our team is in the 4th quarter right now, or maybe even double overtime. This is not the first quarter for this team. They're tired. It's tough.
Dr. Patterson has stood alongside the governor many times over the last year, educating Arkansans about how effective the vaccines are. To those people who are still skeptical, he says this.
Help me to understand who would convince you. If I haven't convinced you, help me to understand who would, and I will find that person and we will talk to you.
I regret it, not getting the COVID vaccination.
This 62-year-old woman did not want to give us her name, but she did want to speak for this story.
It's hard to breathe, so I have to have oxygen. You can see it on me 24/7, and then there's occasions where I cough and I can't stop.
What would you say to all those people who are spreading misinformation about the vaccine?
It's a life or death sentence. It's not a joke.
Consider this. Since January of this year, 98% of the COVID patients hospitalized here in the state of Arkansas were unvaccinated. 98%. Think about that. David Begnow, CBS News, Little Rock.
Another mask mandate is not an option in Arkansas because its state legislature passed a law preventing the governor from enacting one. That law is set to go into effect next week. Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt says the state is suing the U.S. Department of the Interior over a dispute concerning coal mining on tribal reservations. The U.S. Department of the Interior notified the state earlier this year it planned to strip Oklahoma of its jurisdiction to regulate surface coal mining within the Muskogee Nation Reservation. Stitt claims the move is federal overreach. Coming up, we're going to hear from an area first responder about how the pandemic changed their work life and protocols. Plus, a heart surgery patient reunites with the doctor who performed the life-saving operation.
The Cherokee. Call Windows for less.
Pandemic has changed home and work life for pretty much all of us, really, but first responders were affected more than most. We spoke with officials at Joplin's Metro Emergency Transport System, or METS, to see just how their daily life is different. One of the biggest changes they've seen is they're getting more calls, especially from people with flu-like symptoms concerned it could be COVID-19. METS also instituted more protocols for EMTs when they're out in the field.
We've definitely been more busy. We're seeing more calls with shortness of breath, cough, flu-like symptoms, typical cold symptoms that people are being more cautious about.
METS says they do not administer COVID tests, but they do refer patients to area hospitals that will. A heart surgery patient at Freeman Hospital reunited today with the surgeon who performed the life-saving operation. Look at that. Dr. Jeffrey Lee performed a heart valve replacement on Miles Park back in March. Freeman officials say the operation has only a 2% survival rate, but Park surgery was a success. Today, Dr. Lee and Park reunited to discuss a job well done.
Preparing to scrub my hands to do the operation, and they called me into the operating room saying he's going right now, and his blood pressure was very minimal. So we had to immediately go on heart-lung bypass and basically save his life. So he clearly was within an hour of death.
Parks is currently in cardiac rehab at Freeman, working on regaining his strength. Wish him well. Later, a family leaving St. Louis to head back home to California is removed from their flight over a mask dispute involving their son who has autism.
Plus, temperatures warming up quite a bit over the next few days. We're going to look at that coming up.
With Long John Silver's new Honey Rochester
Ashley Home Store. This is home.
It definitely turned out to be a nice Monday for us today. Temperature is pretty good, mid-80s for highs on the warm side. The humidity not too awful for us today, but so far in July, I mean, it's been warm, nearly hot. Temperatures upper 80s to near 90 just about each and every day, but we've only had one day that we were above normal. Every other day has been hovering just below that mark, but we're going to heat things up as we go through the rest of the week this week. Temps right now pretty good. Most of us lower 80s. Case in point, Nevada 82. We're at 78 in Cassville. We have Grove at 84, Pittsburgh 82, and then Neodesha is checking in at 84 degrees. And our humidity slowly creeping back up the next few days. Dew points right now kind of in that 65 to 70 degree range, which puts us in that sticky to muggy range. But we are going to add to the humidity over the next couple days. Looks great. 7th range line currently outside 84, dew point 67. Pressure is slowly dropping 30.04 inches of mercury. Temps drop back through the 80s, 70s, eventually mid 60s later on tonight. So tonight's actually going to be a pretty good night. Most of us are dry. Most of us, not much is going on. A few isolated little showers, little thunder showers that have popped up, mainly in southwestern parts of Missouri, but these are rotating from east to west, which is kind of atypical for us, but does occur this time of the year. A couple random ones popping up just to the east of Stockton Lake. We can head a little bit farther south. Here's Mount Vernon, one little guy, eastern Newton County near Granby, another little cluster, eastern parts of McDonald County, also another one just to the north of Cassville. So these are very hit and miss, and once we lose the heating of the day, these are going to be gone. So in a couple hours, we aren't going to have any of these out there, but they are still kind of rotating through. Besides that, most of the rain is staying to our south. High pressure in charge out across most of the Rockies, and this is really going to control our weather as we go through the next few days. All right, let's go through time for us tonight. We clear out. Temps mid 60s. Looks pretty good during the overnight hours. We drop back to 65 later on tonight. Northerly winds are going to be 5 to 10. As we go through the morning hours, we warm to about 81 by noon and the high temp of 86 degrees during the afternoon. So maybe a notch or two warmer than what we did see today. Humidity still not awful tomorrow. Heat indices upper 80s, but I do think they'll go into the 90s by the time we head into Wednesday afternoon as it does start to heat up. But then a whole lot of nothing. Just kind of hot and dry. We have this big dome of high pressure out to the west. So Wednesday, pretty much warm. Hot on Thursday. Showers mainly stay to our south. Friday, kind of hot. Temperatures into lower 90s over the weekend. And then we finally get some possible rain chances in here by the time Sunday and Monday roll around, but really just not much happening the next few days. 86 tomorrow, 89 on Wednesday, 90 on Thursday, 92 on Friday, mid-90s by the time we head into Saturday and Sunday.
A return to what you would typically expect for July.
What we're supposed to have.
Thanks, Doug. Still ahead, a family says they were prevented from boarding their flight in St. Louis because their son with autism was struggling with his mask. Family has now returned home to California after they were forced off a previous flight. They say they were not allowed to board their plane in St. Louis because their son with autism was struggling with his mask. Reporter Jenna Ray has that story.
Everyone was so nice, and you know, the ticket agent there even gave us a pre-boarding because he looked at my son and you know, noticed. And then a lady from TSA came and got us, and she's like, no, you come here, we're going to get him through.
This weekend, LaShonda Jethro was in St. Louis visiting family with her husband and 17-year-old son Trey.
He's autistic. He has a hard time, so he's nonverbal. But he's a joy. I mean, you know, I can't imagine our life without him.
Jethro says flying with Trey is already challenging, and masking adds another level of difficulty.
He will not keep a mask on his face. We have tried and tried. He just won't do it.
The Jethros were flying Southwest and had no issues flying into Lambert Airport. The airline does have exemptions for masking, which includes passengers with disabilities. The passenger or guardian has to fill out this form making a request for exemption, in addition to having a doctor's note.
We get to the door of the plane and the flight attendant is like, no, he can't come on. He got to wear a mask. I got my phone out, pulled out the doctor's letter, and she's like, well, no, this has to come from corporate, and you have to do this before you get on the plane. I'm a nurse. I understand this pandemic, you know. He's fully vaccinated. I'm fully vaccinated. My husband's fully vaccinated. I even tried to show that.
After going back and forth with the airline and after calling News 4, Jethro says they finally were allowed to board. But when they sat down, LaShonda herself was asked to get off.
And then here comes the manager again. She's like, I need you to come with me. I'm like, for what? I need you to get off the plane. I'm like, okay. And my husband's like, well, do we all have to get off the plane? She's like, no, you and your son can go, but she has to come off.
Southwest sent News 4 this statement. It says LaShonda was asked to deplane after a conversation with flight attendants and not complying with the mask mandate. I talked with a spokesperson on the phone Sunday who says LaShonda wasn't wearing her mask at a point during the conversation with attendants, but said he couldn't tell me any more specific details. LaShonda, though, says she always wears a mask and says she thinks it's because they called the news, something the airline spokesperson also disputes.
I don't know. I'm just still so in shock and just so amazed that this happened, you know. And it's like, what else can I do? You know, I don't know what else to do but call corporate and, you know, what do we need to do to make sure that we're doing the right thing?
The Jethros left on another flight today, but their luggage and medications were on the previous plane and have likely been sitting at the airport in California. We'll be right back. Take time now to honor a local member of the armed forces. Michael McMain joined the U.S. Army in 2007. The Kansas native has been stationed in Afghanistan, and we salute Specialist Michael McMain, a four-state hero. Jordan Abbey joins us now with a look at what's coming up on KOAM News at 9 on Fox 14.
Tonight at 9, a judge upholds Indiana University's vaccination policy. Plus, a shooting outside a baseball game has put a fresh new focus on violence in the U.S. cities. Also going to learn which colors you paint the walls in your home end up adding to the home's value. That, of course, much more coming your way tonight. KOAM News at 9 on Fox 14.
Jordan, thanks. NASA astronauts at the International Space Station are currently growing red and green chili peppers in space. In a press release, NASA says growing the peppers is, quote, one of the longest and most challenging plant experiments attempted aboard the orbital lab. Peppers should be ready for harvest in about 3.5 months. Now, if you're wondering why peppers, well, a NASA official says crew members may prefer spicy or seasoned foods because they can temporarily lose their sense of taste or smell in orbit. Presumably they don't totally lose their sense of taste, otherwise the peppers would be pointless.
True.
I guess.
Just
but they're learning things, you know.
Spice it up a little bit.
Yeah, why not? The weather.
Looks pretty good. We are going to have some isolated little thunderstorms, mainly on the Missouri side, for the next couple hours. And then tonight's nice and quiet. 86 tomorrow, 89 on Wednesday, 90s return by Thursday.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you right back here for KOAM News at 10. Let's make it a great evening.
Salon service is provided by the